My name's Alex, and I live in a tiny place called Pine Hollow, the kind of town where the loudest thing you'll hear after 9 p.m. is your own refrigerator. Back in 2017, Pine Hollow had exactly one store that stayed open all night, a small corner shop called Maple Mart, sitting alone off an old 2-lane highway. It wasn't fancy, but it was the only place where you could grab a snack at 2 in the morning without driving an hour into the next county. Because my sleep schedule has always been a mess, I'd been to Maple Mart more times than I'd like to admit. I figured the night workers probably recognized me by now, even though I'm the type of person no one remembers. I don't stand out. I kind of fade into the background. Anyway, this happened late one Thursday night. I was sitting in my room, half asleep, half awake, trying to get some coding done. I always think better at night when everything is quiet. But hunger hit me out of nowhere, the kind of hunger that makes you drop everything and head straight for food. So around 2 a.m., I grabbed my keys and headed to Maple Mart. The road to the store was completely empty, which wasn't unusual. The highway feels endless at that hour, like it's stretching into nothing. The trees look darker, closer, and you start to feel like the whole world is asleep except you. When I pulled into the parking lot, everything seemed normal. I ordered a sandwich at the counter, then wandered around while I waited. I always do laps around the store, because standing still makes me feel restless. The lights buzzed quietly overhead. The old air conditioner rattled like it was chewing on gravel. It was the kind of noise you can tune out, but it still creeps into your nerves. That's when I noticed him. At the very end of one aisle, right in front of a refrigerator full of bottled drinks, a man sat on the floor with his legs crossed, not kneeling, not crouching, just sitting there like a little kid in story time. His back was stiff, and his head tilted slightly toward the glass door of the fridge, like he was studying something inside it. For a second, I thought I was imagining it. Who sits on the floor of the convenience store at 2 a.m.? I stepped a little closer, like I was just browsing chips, and tried to see his face. I could make out a long, tattered gray coat, torn jeans, and boots that looked like they'd been dragged through mud. But his face was hidden by the angle of his head. Curiosity got the best of me. I walked down another aisle and peeked around the corner. I figured I'd get a quick look, then pretend I was looking at candy or something. But when I turned, he moved so fast, it made my stomach jump. His head snapped toward me like someone had yanked a string. His eyes were huge, so wide, it didn't look natural. His lips shook like he was freezing, even though the store felt warm and stuffy. His whole body looked twisted, like he was holding himself in a position that hurt, but couldn't relax. And his eyes didn't blink, not once. They just held mine blank and empty, like looking into two holes that went nowhere. For a moment, it felt like the whole store had gone silent. Even the buzzing lights seemed to fade. I felt the hair on my arms rise, and my heart thudded hard enough that I swear he could hear it. I broke eye contact and hurried up the nearest aisle. I didn't want to act scared, but my hands were shaking. I kept glancing toward the aisle where he was, half expecting him to walk out or crawl out or do anything that a normal person wouldn't. He didn't. Not a sound. Not a shadow. When my sandwich was finally ready, I grabbed it and went straight to my car without looking back. I didn't even realize how fast I was walking until I almost dropped my keys trying to unlock the door. I honestly thought the weird moment was over. I even laughed a little to myself, telling my brain to calm down. But as I pulled up to the exit of the lot, something moved in my side view. A figure sprinted across the parking lot, full speed. I turned my head and felt my whole body go cold. It was him, the man from inside. His coat flew behind him as he ran full-on sprinting, like someone had called his name from the dark. He wasn't running toward me, though. He was running toward a rusty pickup truck parked at the far end. He jumped inside, and for a second I thought, great, he's leaving. Fine. perfect. Goodbye forever. But the second I got onto the highway, I saw headlights behind me. That part wasn't unusual. Cars appear sometimes. But these headlights were moving faster than a normal late-night driver. They grew bigger and brighter in my rearview mirror, almost like they were climbing on top of me. I slowed down, thinking maybe it was a cop. But as the truck got closer, I recognized the dented bumper and scratched hood. It was him. The man from Maple Mart. My stomach dropped so hard, it felt like it hit the floor of the car. I pressed the gas, trying to put distance between us, but he sped up too. The truck swerved slightly, like he was trying to get my attention. The headlights flashed. His horn blared, long and angry. I didn't know what he wanted. I didn't want to find out. The road stretched on in front of me, empty except for my little sedan and his truck right behind me. The trees on both sides looked like black walls. There was nowhere to turn off, nowhere to hide, nowhere to stop safely. I pushed my car faster. 90, 95, 100. My heart hammered so hard, I felt it in my throat. Every part of me was buzzing with fear. The highway blurred around me, but he stayed right behind, not losing a single inch. Then, out of nowhere, he hit me. The back of my car jerked forward like something huge had grabbed it. My wheel twisted in my hands. I yelled, trying to straighten the car before it spun out. I knew then, without a doubt, he wasn't trying to scare me. He wanted to run me off the road. I saw his headlights swerve again, lining up for another hit. The panic in my chest boiled into something sharp and desperate. I waited until the last second, then yanked the wheel left and slammed the brakes. His truck shot past me, fishtailing wildly. It spun once, twice, then shot off the highway and plowed straight into the dark field beside the road. Dirt and grass exploded upward as the truck disappeared into the darkness. I didn't stop. I couldn't. I didn't even look back. I pushed my car as fast as it would go until I reached Pine Hollow, and I didn't breathe normally again until I was locked inside my house. I called the police and told them everything. They wrote down my statement, but no one has contacted me since. Maple Mart has cameras, so I keep thinking they'll catch him. But every day that passes with no update makes me a little less sure. My car still has a dent in the back. I haven't fixed it yet. Sometimes I look at it and feel that same icy fear creep up my spine. I don't know why that man went after me. I don't know what he saw when he stared at me in the aisle. I don't know what he was doing out there at 2 a.m, sitting cross-legged on the floor like a broken toy someone left behind. But here's the part that keeps me up at night. Whenever I drive past Maple Mart now, I always look at the parking lot. And sometimes, just for a split second, I swear I see someone sitting on the ground in front of the refrigerators, like he's right back where I first found him, waiting for someone else to walk by. Someone who won't be as lucky as me. The whole thing happened in 2016, back when I was 24 and doing delivery work for this tiny startup nobody had ever heard of. My friends used to tease me and call it Marco's Mystery Mail Route, because half the time I didn't even know what I was hauling until I reached the drop-off point. It was usually refurbished gadgets, oddly shaped packages, or old electronics someone wanted to keep out of a landfill. The job was weird. The hours were worse, but the pay kept my lights on and gave me enough leftover cash to grab beers with my cousin Eli on weekends. One night, I was driving through the Appalachian back roads in West Virginia, heading toward a town called Brindle Hollow, which is one of those places you won't find unless you already know it's there. It was close to midnight. The sky was cloudy, and the moon kept slipping in and out like it was afraid to be seen. I'd been on the road for almost 10 hours, and for the last 4 of them, I hadn't seen a single other car. Just trees, darkness, and the kind of silence that feels heavy in your ears. If you've never driven through that part of the Appalachians at night, Imagine a long, narrow road with no streetlights, no houses, and trees that crowd right up to the pavement, like they're leaning in to hear you breathe. Even with my high beams on, I could barely see 30 feet ahead. I had a podcast playing, but the reception kept cutting out, so I was mostly listening to static and the soft thump of the tires. I was halfway through a sharp curve when I saw something up ahead. A small silver car sat crooked on the shoulder. Both doors closed, hazard lights clicking on and off in a slow, sick-looking rhythm. The blinking light made everything around it look like it was moving, like the trees were taking tiny steps forward whenever the darkness pulsed. I slowed down, because that's what you do when you see a stranded driver. At least, that's what I used to think. As I rolled closer, my headlights revealed a woman standing behind the car. She was waving her arms, signaling me like she'd been waiting all night for someone to stop. Her name, she said later, was Dana. She looked around my age, maybe 26 or 27. She wore a big puffy jacket, even though it was warm out, and her hair was a tangled mess, like she'd been running her hands through it nonstop. She kept glancing over her shoulder at the woods, quick tiny flicks of her eyes, like she was expecting something to step out of the dark. Right away, something about her made me uneasy. She wasn't crying or panicking, but she had this nervous, jumpy energy, like her brain was moving faster than her body. But then I thought of my cousin Eli, who always said, if you ever break down on those old mountain roads, you better pray someone decent drives by before something else does. So I figured I should at least check on her. I rolled the window down a little, just an inch or two, and she rushed over. She didn't ask if I could help check the engine or give her a hand calling a tow truck. She just said she needed a ride, immediately, and pointed down the road toward Brindle Hollow. Her voice shook. Not loud shaky, but like she was fighting to control it. I told her I wasn't supposed to pick up passengers, which was true, but she kept begging. She looked terrified. And I mean real terror, the kind people don't fake well. Against my better judgment, I let her in. I still regret that choice. As she climbed into the passenger seat, she murmured a thank you without looking at me. She pressed her hands together in her lap so tightly her knuckles turned white. I started driving, but after a minute or two, I tried asking what had happened. The questions were simple. Did your car break down? Did you hit something? But she dodged them with weird, scattered answers that didn't match each other. At one point, she said the engine died. Then she said her lights went out. Then she said her phone battery exploded. She kept staring into the side mirror like she expected someone to appear behind us. I almost told her we needed to turn around and get help from the last gas station I'd passed 30 miles back. But right then, I glanced at her abandoned car in the rearview mirror. That's when I saw him. A tall man stepped out from behind her car, like he'd been crouched there the entire time. He moved slowly into the open, not running, not shouting, just watching. His clothes blended into the dark so well that I almost missed him entirely. The hazard lights flashed across his face in quick bursts, and every time it lit up, he looked a little closer. Before I could say anything, something else caught my eye. Up ahead, maybe 40 feet in front of us, another figure emerged from the tree line. This one stood in the road, holding something long in his hand. At first, I thought it was a walking stick, but the way he gripped it made my stomach twist. It looked like a crowbar, or a pipe, or something made for hitting. He didn't wave. He didn't shout. He just stood there, waiting. I didn't think. I just slammed my foot on the gas. The tires screamed, and Dana whipped around so fast her hair hit my face. She started yelling, not words at first, just panicked sounds. Then she twisted toward her backpack on the floor and began digging through it like she needed something urgently. My heart felt like it was punching through my ribs. I didn't know what she was reaching for, and I wasn't going to wait to find out. I yelled at her to stop. She didn't. so I grabbed the small pistol I kept under my seat, something I'd carried ever since a bear wandered too close to my truck one night, and set it on the steering wheel where she could see it. She froze. Her hand hung in the air for a second before she pulled it back slowly. She didn't scream or cry. She didn't even argue. She just stared straight ahead, her breathing shallow and shaky. The road felt endless after that. Every tree looked like it could be hiding someone. Every shadow moved the wrong way. The whole time, Dana didn't say a single word. She just sat there, stiff and silent, like she was scared of something behind us. Or scared of me. When we finally reached Brindle Hollow, I pulled into the first open place I found, a tiny gas station with a flickering sign and 2 old pickups parked near the pumps. I told her to get out. She refused, whispering something that sounded like, "They're coming." I didn't know who they were, and I didn't want to find out. I opened her door and told her firmly it was time to go. She stumbled onto the pavement, yelling something that didn't make sense, strings of half-words and choked sounds that made my skin crawl. One of the guys near the pumps started walking toward us with a confused look. I didn't stick around. I jumped in the truck, slammed the door, and drove off before anyone could ask questions. About 10 minutes later, I pulled into another gas station, one with better lighting and other people around, and checked the passenger seat. Stuffed between the cushions was a small plastic bag. Inside was a cheap burner phone battery and a handful of zip ties still in their packaging. That's when my legs started shaking. I threw it all away without opening anything else. I didn't want to know more. I didn't want to imagine what those men were planning or how many times they'd done something like this. I didn't even want to think about what Dana had been reaching for in her bag. I never reported it. Not to the police, and definitely not to my company. I just went home, locked every door, and didn't sleep for 2 days. And every time I drive through the mountains now, even in daylight, I swear the trees feel like they're watching. Some nights, when I think back on that silver car with its blinking hazards, I wonder how long those men had been waiting on that road. I wonder if they'd chosen it, because almost no one ever drives there. And sometimes I wonder something worse. If I hadn't stopped, would they have waited for someone else? Or were they waiting for me? This happened back in 2018, when my cousin Leo and I were driving from Arizona to North Carolina. We weren't in a rush, so we picked a route that zigzagged through a bunch of small towns Leo thought would be fun to see. I didn't care much at the time, but I probably should have questioned it. His idea of fun usually involved long stretches of empty roads and abandoned-looking gas stations where even the air felt stale. The stretch that really stuck with me was somewhere in eastern Colorado, way out on Highway 350. If you've never been out there, picture a dry, lonely place where the land just sits there for miles without a single house, tree, or sign of life. It's the kind of road where you can see another car from so far away that it looks like a tiny silver bead floating in heat waves. We had been driving since morning, and by evening I was knocked out in the passenger seat. I fall asleep in cars so easily it's almost a joke. According to Leo, I didn't move for hours. But around 9:45 p.m., I woke up when the car slowed down. I opened my eyes and saw we were pulling into one of those tiny, flickering gas stations that look like they exist only out of stubbornness. Leo said he needed a drink and wanted to top off the tank. I figured I should use the bathroom before we ended up back on the empty highway, so I hopped out too. I didn't ring my phone. I just didn't think anything weird would happen. Honestly, that's the part that still annoys me the most. Inside, the cashier didn't even glance at us. He was this really still guy, like he'd been carved from old wood and propped behind the counter. The store lights hummed loudly, the way cheap lights do when they're about to burn out. I went straight down the narrow hallway toward the restrooms. As soon as I pushed open the door to the women's bathroom, I nearly ran into a woman stepping out of one of the stalls. And right away, something in my stomach dropped. I didn't know why, but I knew something was off. Her hair was long, grayish, and tangled into clumps, almost like it was glued together. It hung around her face in sticky strings. She wore bright orange flip-flops that smacked loudly against the tile, but she didn't seem bothered by the sound at all. What really threw me was her clothing. She was wrapped in this thick, fuzzy red coat, the kind people wear in the dead of winter. But outside it was still warm, mid-70s at least. You don't forget something like that. She held a plastic grocery bag tied in a knot. It bulged like something was rolling around inside it. And the moment she saw me, she stopped. Her whole body went still. Her eyes locked onto mine, like she'd been waiting for me specifically. It wasn't a normal glance. It felt like she was checking to see if I recognized her, like she expected me to say something. When I didn't, she didn't move. She didn't smile or nod or step aside. She just stared. I tried to walk around her, and after a few seconds, she moved her foot back just enough for me to squeeze by. I figured she'd leave, but instead, she turned and drifted toward the sinks behind me. She didn't wash her hands. She didn't look in the mirror. She just stood there facing the wall, like she was waiting for some signal. I was already creeped out, so I hurried into the closest stall and locked the door. And that's when it hit me. I had no phone, no bag, nothing. If something happened, I had zero way to contact Leo. I stayed quiet and listened. The bathroom was so silent I could hear the hum of the light above me. After maybe a minute, I heard the soft smack-smack of her flip-flops moving toward the exit. Then the door opened loudly and slammed shut. At first, I felt relieved. But then, under that relief, I noticed something else. A soft, slow breathing. Not mine, someone else's. And it was coming from inside the bathroom. My whole body froze. She hadn't left. She had pretended to leave. I sat there hardly breathing, listening. The breathing wasn't fast or angry. It almost sounded patient, like she was waiting to see if I'd come out. After a long time, the door opened and closed again. The breathing stopped. For a second, hope rushed through me. But then I heard a sharp inhale, like someone who had been holding their breath way too long. The door opened and shut a third time. That was when I knew she was playing some kind of twisted game. I didn't know what she wanted. I didn't want to know. I couldn't sit there forever. I waited until everything was dead silent. Then I unlocked the stall and peeked out. The bathroom was empty. I washed my hands as fast as possible and stepped back into the store. I didn't see her anywhere, which somehow made everything worse. I decided to wait until another customer finished checking out, so I wouldn't have to walk outside alone. When the man headed for the exit, I slipped out behind him. The moment I stepped outside, my heart nearly stopped. She was there, standing just to the right of the doorway, half hidden in the shadow cast by the building. She wasn't staring blankly now, she was glaring, eyes wide and sharp. Her coat looked even bulkier in the dim light, like something underneath it was moving. And she held something in her hand. At first, it looked like a piece of metal, but when she shifted her weight, it caught the light, and I saw the long, thin edge of a blade. Not huge, but big enough to hurt someone. She crouched a little, almost like an animal about to pounce. I felt my chest tighten. I braced myself to run or scream. But then, suddenly, she stood up straight, turned, and walked quickly around the back of the building. No hesitation. No stumbling. Like she had somewhere else to be. I sprinted to the car and locked the door. Leo looked confused, but when I told him to just drive, he didn't argue. As we pulled out, I saw the woman again. She was standing at the far corner of the building, watching our car roll away. Her head followed us until we turned onto the highway. I told Leo everything, and he kept saying I should have brought my phone, which was true. But even now, years later, thinking about her still makes my skin crawl. I haven't used a lonely roadside restroom since. And honestly, I don't ever plan to. I still think about what happened back in 2017, even though I try not to. I was 22 and working for my cousin Leo, who ran a tiny delivery business out of Maple Ridge, a quiet little town in northern Illinois. My job was simple: pick up small boxes, drive them to different towns in the region, come back, and repeat. Nothing glamorous, but it paid my bills and let me listen to music all night without anyone bothering me. Most nights were slow and peaceful. I'd drive across empty highways, sip cheap gas station coffee, and watch the lights from passing trucks glide by. But one night in January, everything changed for me. And ever since then, I can't stop at rest areas after dark without feeling my stomach twist. It was a brutally cold evening, the kind where your breath hangs in the air, even inside your vehicle. I'd left Maple Ridge around 7:30 p.m., heading east toward a little town called Harbor Point. The drive was supposed to be a little under 4 hours, but after the first hour, the cold started creeping into my bones. You know that kind of cold where the steering wheel feels like a block of ice, and your fingers start to ache even with the heater running? That kind. Around 9 o'clock, the road leveled out into a long, empty stretch of Highway 14. No houses, no gas stations, no towns, just darkness pressing in on all sides, and this steady whisper of wind slipping through the cracks of my truck. I was alone out there except for the occasional semi blazing past like a comet. Then the tiredness hit hard. My head kept drooping forward, and each time I jerked it back up, it scared me more. When I spotted a big blue sign for Brookside Rest Area, 1 mile, I figured I'd stop for a minute, stretch, maybe get something cold to drink to wake myself up. I pulled off the highway and rolled into the rest area. The place looked almost abandoned. Only a few streetlights worked, and they flickered in a slow, ghostly way that made everything look like it was breathing. The main building was a small concrete block with restrooms and vending machines. And way at the far end of the lot, tucked into the last parking space, sat an old dark green van. No windows on the sides. The kind of van you'd expect to see behind a mechanic shop, not sitting alone in a rest stop in the middle of winter. I parked under the brightest light I could find. Even then, the shadows around the lot felt too dark, like they were thicker than normal shadows. I locked the truck and hurried toward the building. Inside, the restroom smelled like cold tile, old water, and something else almost like wet cardboard left too long in a basement. The heater rattled nonstop, making a sound like someone tapping a pipe with a spoon. I splashed cold water on my face and tried to breathe. When I lifted my head and looked at myself in the mirror, I heard the door creak open behind me. I turned fast. No one was there, not even footsteps walking away. Just silence, heavy and weird. I told myself the wind probably hit the door, but when I stepped back outside, something made the hairs on my arms jump. The dark green van, the one I'd seen at the end of the lot, now had its parking lights glowing. Not the headlights, not the engine running, just the dim orange glow of the parking lights, like eyes opening in the dark. I hadn't heard it click on. I walked faster than I meant to, unlocked my truck, climbed inside, and practically fell into the seat. When I started the engine and backed out, the van's lights shut off again instantly, like someone was watching for me to leave and didn't want me to see them. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe someone inside was waking up. Maybe they bumped a switch. But the longer I drove, the less believable that sounded. Back on Highway 14, I kept checking my mirrors. 5 minutes passed. 10. Nothing. Then way behind me, 2 lights appeared. They stayed far back at first, small and steady. But they grew, slowly. Too slowly, like someone easing toward me on purpose. By the time the vehicle closed the distance, I recognized it, the same dark green van. Dirty edges, boxy shape, no windows, no markings. It crept up to my bumper and hung there like it was tied to me. I sped up. It sped up. I slowed. It slowed. It stayed so close I couldn't even see its headlights anymore, just the faint glow reflecting on my tailgate. Then it pulled into the left lane and came up beside me. The passenger window rolled down halfway. I could barely see inside, but I could make out a face, a pale shape, eyes too dark to catch the light, wearing something that looked like a hood. The person lifted a hand and motioned for me to roll my window down. Slow, almost gentle, like they were coaxing me. I shook my head. They pointed toward the back of my truck like something was wrong, like they wanted me to pull over. But the back of the truck was empty that night. Completely empty. The way the hand kept motioning didn't feel helpful. It felt rehearsed, like they'd done it before, like they expected me to trust them. I kept driving, staring ahead. The van swerved closer, honking sharply. I drifted away from it. My heart kept pounding like it wanted out. Then the van sped up, cut in front of me so fast I thought we'd collide, and swerved onto the shoulder. I blew past them, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles hurt. I checked my mirror a minute later. The van was back behind me, closer, faster. It would fall back until it disappeared from sight, then roar forward like a predator, testing how scared its prey was. At that point, I knew I needed people around. Somewhere lit, somewhere busy. A sign appeared like a gift. Redwood Junction truck stop to 3 miles. I took the exit so fast I felt the tires skid. I pulled into the truck stop, parked under a big harsh light near the diesel pumps, and jumped out before the van even hit the ramp. Inside the diner, it was warm, bright, and smelled like soup and coffee. A woman behind the counter looked up at me, saw how scared I was, and brought over a man who looked like he'd been driving trucks since before I was born. Big shoulders, heavy boots, long gray beard. I told him what happened. He didn't say much, just nodded once and walked outside. When he opened the door, cold air rushed in, and so did the sight of that dark van idling across the lot, pointed straight at my truck like it had been waiting. The trucker muttered something under his breath, squared his shoulders, and walked toward them. I stayed inside, frozen at the window, watching. He reached the van. I saw him talking. I couldn't hear a thing. Then all at once, the van reversed, swung around so sharp the tires squealed, and sped off toward the highway without looking back. When the trucker came back inside, he took a slow breath and told me there were 2 people in the van, both wearing dark hoodies, neither saying a word. He said